You're listening to and watching Emails Not Dead, brought to you by Cinch Mailgun.
Welcome to Emails Not Dead. My name is Eric, and this is JT.
Hello.
Hello.
Am I on the side there? Is that? Can I see
Oh, yeah. I guess. Now that we're in a visual format, this kind of works out. So, like, you can see, like, oh, JT's over here. He could be. He's usually over here, but switch it
Is
up
this what
today.
the Brady Bunch was like when they
Yeah.
filmed that
Yeah,
intro? Like, where are you?
You know?
Just trying to find people. That's what it was.
Yeah, as you can tell, we're in a safe space for geeks and the geeks that love email. We're here this week to talk to our friends at Really Good Emails, Justine Jordan, who is an email enthusiast and the head of strategy and communication at Be Free. Hi, Justine.
Hi.
Yeah. And Mike Nelson is also joining us as well, who's the co-founder of Really Good Emails and the head of growth at BeFree.io. What's up, Mike?
Mike's
like,
on mute. It's one of his.
You're muted also, Mike.
Yeah. Mike is the king of being on mute when he doesn't want to be.
right.
It's one of his other titles, so he wears it proudly.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Well, speaking with Really Good Emails in the past, we know that y'all procure and curate a bunch of really good emails across the industry wide. So, it's great to have y'all back here again. And, this time around, we want to talk about, some of the surveys and the statistics that y'all have around, marketing, creating emails. We've talked about it in the past, not being wasteful with your time, creating emails and coming up with campaigns. So it's great to have some numbers behind it. So let's jump in. Let's see.
What is the number we're talking about here?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can. That's what we're here to find out today.
The
There's
original,
quite
yeah.
a few numbers.
Yeah. The original one that this whole episode came from, it was a week and a half from the last time, and apparently there's a new number, so that's what we're here for, excited to hear about today.
What is this mystery number that you're talking about? What does it represent?
What does it all mean?
I guess
Listen,
Mike
we're
and
gonna find
Justine, like, what made y'all want to come up with this survey and do this whole thing from the get-go?
Yeah, I think we should probably give you some background to the audience here on how we came up with this. Justine's been in this realm for a long time, so have you guys. So you know that you'll get a survey from your ESP at some point saying, tell us how much you like it, and maybe some pain points, right? So you get like these published surveys from Adobe or from Salesforce or other kind of the bigger ESPs back in like 2015, 2016, and they're very targeted on their users. And so for Really Good Emails, what we wanted to do was say, hey, let's be ESP agnostic and let's just see what the feeling is like out there and try to get as much information from these people as possible, as much as they want to give us, and so every year we add a couple more questions to the survey. It's gotten pretty long, and thank you for everyone that's taken it. I think we're close to 1,500 people that have taken the survey so far and spent way more time than we ever expected them to spend on this thing. And so one of those questions is, how much time does it take to produce an email? And so that's kind of the crux of what we're talking about today, one of many. So we asked them about their industry and what their role is and how long they've been in email and what ESP they use and what are their pain points and all sorts of stuff. And so we can run correlations between that production time and see if there's something else that relates to why is this production time increasing over the years. When we first published in 2018, it was right around 6 days. Last year, we were at 7.7 business days. So, it wasn't huge. It was like, 5.7 to 7.7. So it's like an extra day,
Mm-hmm.
This year, as of, us doing this because we haven't finished all the analysis yet, but we're at 8.21 business days. So we've added an extra half a day in a year to producing email content, which is, that's a week and a half worth of stuff for our business. That's a long time that goes into one email. So I'm happy to dive into all the things that come around with that.
Yeah, and that's a 44% increase since Mike started doing this survey in 2018. And I'm sure we can talk more about this, but it's like you would expect that with all these like innovations in tech and in MarTech and all these great tools that we have, that maybe our jobs get a little bit easier.
Yeah,
but it looks like maybe the opposite is kind of true. Really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Is it like weather-based, Mercury in retrograde? Like, how does that all happen? Like, I'm not too sure. So hopefully,
Tornadoes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, they can definitely put a damper on things for sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, and kind of break it down even more. Like, I just kind of, there was a lot of info there, and I kind of want to go into a little bit of like what it is and what it all means, and how we get from point A to point B. And the first thing I just wanted to double check and make sure that I understand is like how, like, when you say people are taking the survey, who's taking the survey? How do they get to the survey? Like, which people are we pinging to say like, hey, you're survey worthy, let's go?
Well, Really Good Emails has how many subscribers, Mike? Like 250,000? That's just to the newsletter. And not to mention like the web traffic we get to the actual site. And so we promote the survey to the Really Good Emails audience through the email newsletter, through people that visit the site. And so what I think is cool about this data, especially Mike was comparing it to a lot of the vendor specific surveys that are valuable in their own right that come out. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that has always struck me about those surveys is that they were almost always seem to be aimed at an enterprise buyer. Clearly, right? They're let's be honest, they're marketing materials, and that's okay. I'm cool with that. I used to be a marketer. But no one was really ever talking about like the people that were in the weeds. Like what's the pain of like the average person and like what it takes to actually get this thing done instead of just the people that are like buying the software. Really Good Emails has not much to sell besides occasionally a ticket to unspam, and that's even sold out. So, I think we're in this really unique position to raise the voice of the people in that audience that are a slice of everyone that has their hands on email. And one of the most interesting things about this, just a couple hours ago, in fact, I was putting the final touches on trying to figure out how industry plays a role in this. And so I like how we have just a really diverse slice of a lot of people that have their hands on email, like doing the creation.
Yeah, no, I like it. I had seen, the questions and like who's, kind of how you self-report, like who you are and, what you do. And there is like a really good crossover of just a good breadth of people that seem to be doing this kind of stuff. And I know for our survey, right, we have a survey that we do also that is very deliverability focused. And then there's always, the satisfaction type surveys that happen. And I don't think I've seen a whole lot of this where it's like, hey, just what are you doing? What's the pain point? And then every single segment I know has its job when it comes to email. I know there's a whole lot of us that are within email and claim to be of email and live in that space. But then those roles change just a little bit with everybody involved. So this is really cool. I really like the data that was in here and like how it compares everything and, what everybody's doing. Exactly like you said, I appreciate that it's a, on your day to day, how are you in this? How are you in the trenches every day through email? So when we talk about the length of time that it used to create, I know there was some nuance that we had talked about in the preparation for this podcast episode, is that you're kind of reliant on self-reporting for people, and then you break it down. You tend to try to break it down by their individual roles to try to get an idea of what it is that's taking a little bit longer. So can we hear more about that?
Yeah, totally. I think one of the things that was probably that stood out to me the most, we also asked people to self-report on the complexity of their email process. So you can either tell us that your email process is simple, that it's complex, or that it's very complex. You kind of have like 3 different ratings that you can give it. And that was actually the most significant factor affecting the production time. And there is almost 3.5 time difference between a simple email process that takes about 4 days to complete. And when you actually go to the very complex end of that, it blows that 8 days out of the water. It's almost 14 days. It's like 13.5 days on average if you have a very complex email process. So that was the thing that was the most significantly correlated to increasing production time. And that makes sense, right? Like if I have a very simple email, I sent one this morning. I had to crack open the ticket tailor, which is like the system that we use to sell unspam tickets. And it's basically like a plain text email that, I typed out and sent Mike a test send, and then we, lit a candle and, press send. That's an inside joke, by the way. We'll have to get like can you put that in there in post, T-Bird? Like a shot of our RGE really good candles, but
That's awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, like the really complex stuff. Like I'm not setting up segmentation or doing a bunch of dynamic content rules or writing AMP script or anything like that, right? So yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, and I mean, with the complexity, I know that's one of the things that we talk about a lot when it comes to the deliverability side. Whenever we're looking at how an email is performing, where it's landing at, like there's so much complexity. When you start getting so complex, there is a lot of complexity with the information you get back and how you're reading that information and how you need to consider about performance of those complex emails when they're going out. So I get it. I totally understand like why they're taking forever. And I wish that more people that were sending those complex emails would take more time to do it, because sometimes you get really complex ones and they're just like, I don't know how they do it. Like the whole lighting a candle thing, I understand, I get. For a while we had a Jon Snow themed candle because Jon Snow holding a little baby lamb. That was actually a ghost. So for those that watched Game of Thrones,
Oh man.
So, but it is one of those things. I couldn't in a million years, being now in the industry for so long, I couldn't just hit send on something that's really complex. So it totally makes sense, totally understand, and yeah, on the shorter side, totally get it. Much easier to get through and done. And I know when we start talking about again, when we look further into the deliverability aspect of things and how that's coming back, we need people to pay attention to those things. That was one of the things that I was curious about. Like, do people ever tend to talk about like that? I'm curious as to whether like anybody's looking out for that, or what roles we would correlate to being the people that would watch out for that piece, right? Because I know there's the pieces of that even on the marketing side, we talk about deliverability and the whole engineering part of that thing and what it is, but the people on the marketing end even, or people that are looking at this information within it and seeing how it's relating to the deliverability of things, like when it comes to getting information, getting numbers back, considering the numbers and complexity and everything else that happened with the previous one to then translate over to the next one and how that's compiling in there. So I was just more of a curious thought that, kind of came into mind, like when we were talking about all this, and just wondering if there's, roles that we see correlated to that would align then within this process.
Yeah, so we do ask in the survey for, again, you to self-report your role. And so we provide you with a few different generalized buckets to choose from. You can self-report as, a designer, a developer, writer, strategist, analyst, project manager, executive, or we call just the jack of all trades, Jack or Jill of all trades. Like, I wear all the hats. We know that that's super common in email. Like, that's been me, it's been Mike, it's been probably all of us at some point once in our lives, right? We wear all the email hats. And so the type of role that you have in that process does seem to indicate, whether or not your process takes a little bit longer. And this is one of those things where I would argue, like with any sort of data analysis, like where's the chicken and where's the egg? Because the roles that reported having the longest email process were probably ones that you'd expect. Analysts, executives, project managers, the strategists. The ones that reported the lowest were folks like the Jacks and Jills of all trades, designers, developers, and writers. And whenever I think about the deliverability side of things, that always to me sounds like analysis, maybe some strategy, right? Even occasionally an executive. Like, I know if there's a deliverability problem for really good emails or be free, I tend to get pulled into that because I just been doing this forever and I know a thing or two about deliverability. And so, but it's usually like an analyst type of person or an operations person that's responsible for analyzing, post send, which includes everything from click and open data all the way to, are we making it to the inbox? I used to monitor DMARC, compliance to see if anyone was spoofing us, right? So all those kinds of things. Yeah, Mike.
So there's also, we ask how long you've been creating emails or that's been part of your role. And one of the things that I noticed when I was doing the research for this call was that your tenure at your company, or just how much experience you have, the production depends on your tenure. So, for example, if you're like a new analyst, let's say, because analyst is kind of like the best set for this like deliverability individual, because we said in the survey that you spend time in reports and in Excel and looking at click-through rates and delivery rates and all that kind of stuff, right? So analyst is really the closest fit for this role. But you say like people that have like under 2 years, they spend on average 16 days looking at emails. That's a lot. And then when you go up to people that are like 8 years, they're spending a day and a half. So the longer you have in this role, the better you get at it, right? And what I kind of like, there's this other correlation that I found. It wasn't in our notes, but I found this morning. And have you heard of the endowment effect? It's kind of like the IKEA effect. Like you build something
No.
and then like you like it better because you put your hands on it and like it's yours. So like you build a set of Legos and you're like, oh, that's super cool because I built it. Or like you have kids and you're like, my kids are the best because I raised them, right? So the endowment effect is kind of like how much time you put into something. And I thought this was super interesting too, because the people, one of the questions is like your sentiment of the future of email. And the people that have a long experience with email, like 6, 8, 9, 10 years, have a pretty positive, lasting sentiment for email. They have a longer lasting. There's a lot of data here. They have a longer lasting sentiment, but they spend. Hold on, let me go back to this. They spend lasting positive on average 7 days to create an email, whereas the people that have like a negative impact, they're like 6 days or 3.5 days. So to me, this means that you're spending more time creating the email because you like it more, and you feel like if you build more on top of it and you critique it and it's like your little baby, that it's going to have a bigger impact, right? And so you're actually spending more time because you enjoy it. And so I thought that was a really cool side of the flip of the coin, where it's like, oh, look at all these tools that are supposed to make it faster for us, but really, if you enjoy it, you want to spend more time on it.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, like, are we kind of indirectly measuring like job satisfaction and like just joy here,
Yeah.
right? You know, we always talk about how like no one chooses email, email chooses you.
Yeah.
And if email has chosen you and you found joy in this, like for whatever weird reason, but then again, here we're on a podcast about email, right? So,
Yeah.
so that's actually super interesting. Yeah, like if you really experience what you're doing and you like it, then you're going to invest more time into getting better at it and probably do your job faster.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Really good employees. Didn't even know. Dang, nice.
Faster or not faster, because you just like to spend time on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
And I think it's exactly that too, like where it's not faster, but even with the better tools, I think you would want to spend more time really crafting it to be as good as possible, because you know what that impact is. And that's, I think, where we land a lot in the deliverability side, where, you know, people recognize that you're going to get good ROI, that you're going to get good return on investment. You can grow an audience, you can grow a brand, you can get things that are really, really well done, you know, by doing those things, by investing the time and doing it better than what the other person is doing. It's awesome to see that they like it, and then they're spending time to do it from the sound of it.
Yeah, let's dig in on that for a second, because if you're spending all this time, how much would it suck if you go straight into a junk box, right? Like, what you're really doing is trying to set up, like you said, the branding is really important, getting good click-throughs is really important, but also like your BME, your DMARC, like all that stuff's super important, so that like you don't spend 2 weeks on an email and nobody sees it.
That would be the worst.
Yeah.
Precisely.
That tracks. No, that's awesome.
Like our own Megan Bushhausen, like she puts so much effort and work into our custom emails for Email Camp, and like if our emails landed in spam, she would come down from the Northeast and track us down and figure out what the heck is going on. Why did I waste all this time? So it's like, yeah, it's the benefit for everyone. This stuff has to work no matter what. So.
Yeah. From the deliverability side, I always want to use that to like pitch the whole deliverability thing of how important it is, because it's like if you do a throwaway one, like you may lose a good part of your audience. Like you may lose, you know, people that would normally be interested in the things that you're saying and you're doing if you just, you know, kind of do it halfway. And by continuously doing it well, like keep paying attention to everything that you're doing every single time that you're doing it, like that's how you build it. That's how you continue to grow and be better. And then you have those ones like Megan did a few years ago with the MySpace themed April Fools. It was April Fools? Was it April Fools? I think it was April Fools.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was.
And it's like a huge hit, but it's like you build it from there. You know, people know what to expect and know that and understand that you're going to send something that's worthy of being opened.
Yeah, totally. And again, we don't have any data that backs this up, but I think between the five of us, like we have enough industry experience to know that one of the things that typically goes into your email program becoming more complex is more sophisticated segmentation, more sophisticated dynamic content. And we know that those things typically are done to increase engagement, to make the content more relevant, to make it more engaging. And so I hope by now, although there's probably a whole different podcast topic on here about busting spam and deliverability myths, right? But at this point in time, in the year 2025, it's not using free or like your content trigger words or whatever that land you in spam, right? It's all those other things. It's engagement, it's reputation. Is the content actually engaging? Did I have permission to mail? And an organization that has a more complex process is clearly investing a lot into that and probably understands the role of all of those things. I do think the two are probably related, that the more complex your email process is, the more likely it is to have higher deliverability because you're investing into all of those aspects of a great campaign.
Yeah. I think that also kind of ties in what you originally were saying, was like, with more time and as we become, closer to getting, flying cars and whatnot, getting more tooling and better, overall just access to stuff, maybe these folks that enjoy doing emails, taking the survey, are investing time in learning these new things and putting those into effect into these email campaigns. That's why it's taking a little bit longer to curate.
Speaking of, I love that they found that. I think, what was it y'all were telling us, that people were averaging, like, the original completion time was 7 minutes. I think now people are taking 25 minutes for the survey, right?
Yeah, putting some thought and care into it.
People care. People really care about how much feedback they're giving.
Or we just have too many questions. Apologies. Like, like, why is this getting bigger and bigger and bigger?
Yeah.
We actually cut. I think we cut like 10 questions this year. Because it was like, this thing is getting bloated. So there were some questions in there from, like, COVID days when people are changing jobs really fast and not quite sure what's going on, and so we removed a lot of those. But generally, we try to stay true to the core principles that we have talked about today. One of those is also team size. Like, it adds complexity, right? So if you take a look at, like, a team of 1 or 2, they probably don't even care about deliverability because they just want to get it out the door. Like, they're a small company, they don't even know what deliverability is, like, and they might have a small list size because they're 1 or 2 people. And so you take a look at, this is always, every single year, team size correlates with list size, right? So the larger your list size, the larger your team gets, which is typical. And then you see, like, the analyst, kind of what we talked about earlier, that starts showing up with teams about 4 or 5 and above. And so really, you start caring about this when you have about a team of about 4 or 5 people dedicated to doing email for your team. But, team size does make a huge impact on production time too. Like, you take a look at, teams of 10 plus are spending almost 18 days on average to do that. If you're watching the video version of this podcast, you will see some stats here.
Here's how that correlates with team size. So we got, like, a nice chart here, right? Solo professionals, just a few days, but like Mike said, like, once you hit 4 or 5, it dang near doubles, right? So
yeah, that's crazy. That's awesome. Yeah. I'm wondering now if there's another question. I'm sorry to put you on the spot because I know this data is already adjusted to how we want to see it. But because I know the other topic that we had talked about is how often people are sending out email. Like, and so whenever we're talking about people that are doing those campaigns where they're, like, hitting, again and again and again, does that also tend to correlate with, like, list size and stuff like that? Or is there any correlation between, team size or list size to how often they're doing it?
Yeah, we did ask about list size. I don't know, Mike, have you already run that data? I did not look at that in particular. I did look at some correlation with, what was it? The number of simultaneous emails that you're working on. And so, again, I don't think any of this is super shocking, but for a company, if you're running more concurrent email projects, right? So if you're just doing, like, 1 or 2 emails at a time versus if you're doing 10 or 11 or more emails at a time, it almost triples, right? So people that are just doing 1 or 2 emails at a time, it's like 4 days. People that are doing 6 or more emails ends up being 11 days. And then it keeps going from there, basically.
Yeah, that's
that's also industry specific too, right? Where you have, like, these hype up periods like Black Friday. You will probably be spending so much time on your Black Friday stuff. If you're in higher education, I know January, February, you're mapping out 30 to 40 different emails to hit the springtime for enrollment. There's all sorts of stuff that kind of plays into when we ask these questions, because this survey goes out at the end of the year and then January, February. So we try to make sure that we get a breadth of it. And so we miss the Black Friday, but we still have, some of those industries that are high level planning mode where it's top of mind, where they're like stressed out of their brains. So.
Yep. And I think the other part of the industry stuff that wasn't at all surprising is that, highly regulated industries, financial services, insurance, healthcare, all have higher levels or longer production times. Yeah, right. Whereas I don't want to say like less regulated or but simpler businesses most likely that don't have big marketing teams, manufacturing, real estate, automotive, those are all like industries that have smaller. And then when you look at like the metadata of industry, boiling it down to B2B, B2C, am I a nonprofit? Am I a community run organization? I was actually surprised. I expected there to be a bigger difference between B2B and B2C. Like in my mind, I've almost always been like in the B2B world. And so B2C to me has always seemed more complex and like higher volume and, more of everything. And so I kind of expected that to be a bigger difference. But B2C was only about one more day on average than B2B. And it was actually, like the community run and the publicly funded organizations that take longer, probably because they're more resource constrained, more complexity, more regulation, right?
Right.
Yeah. That makes total sense. Yeah. And I mean, and with industry too, like we know from experience with customers, when there are customers who are needing to be now, it's more of a templated approach. Like, let's, be relevant and be quick and be able to hit that. And then they have the opportunity then within the deliverability side of things to also then consider the things that they're putting in there, like how they're curating that and then be able to iterate it through, a little more metered, as that kind of comes through and because they're being fast. And yeah, I can imagine when you're doing more marketing, when you're, heavy, like financial stuff, I know is always like kind of a crazy thing too. And paying a little closer attention to how those are looking and how they're different from spot to spot. I think everybody has to be aware of what they're doing, how they're doing it. I think overall is a big thing that we always tell people, like, know your audience and know what they're expecting from you. And then that makes a huge difference, I think, in a lot of things that we're concerned with. So like, I would assume that we're seeing that correlation, or that you had seen that correlation there too.
I'm wondering also, like, as you've continued to do this survey over time, do y'all have people that continuously fill them out as well, year over year? How the metrics from someone that took it in 2018 compared to in 2025? How their data has changed maybe, or if they're with the same company.
That's all. Yeah. If they self-report their email address at the end, that's, I guess, a unique ID that we could go and we could find how they've changed over time. That could be cool. Like I could, because I take the survey also every year, right? So I'd be like, how was I carried about this, in 2017 or 2018? But no, that's not something we really look at. I think some people might be like, that'd be weird if you're seeing how I specifically changed roles over the years, but
fair, big brother type of scenario.
we know how your career is going.
That's I mean, how does really good emails make money? We mine your data. No, that's just
no. definitely not.
That's good. I wanted to open up for you guys to really talk about anything that you find interesting in here.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I found interesting, I've still been digging more and more because we also asked about people using AI, and that's been very interesting to me because I remember at Unspam last year, I was very surprised when Mike revealed on stage the data around just how little people had adopted AI so far. And that seems to not only be changing, people are adopting AI more often, but again, correlation of whether or not using AI to reduce your production time was also interesting. And so people or organizations that using AI have a 37% reduction in their time to produce an email. So it goes from like 11 days on average for those that are not using AI to just under 7 days for those that are using AI. And the most common way that people are using AI is for copywriting. And that also kind of makes sense, right? Yeah. That, if I'm going to take a long time to write something, put it through the review and, approval process, all that kind of stuff, that like shortening that part of that process is probably ended up being pretty impactful.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. That's very interesting.
What are you guys seeing on the AI side for deliverability? What's out there that's kind of helping your world make sense of, inbox placements and making it work?
Yeah, it's growing. It's still, I think
Yeah.
it's a little bit more in its infancy still. I think as people have discovered how to do it better. But I mean, the biggest thing that I think we're looking into from our side more than anything else is going to be the analytics of everything.
Yeah.
Human eyes can only go so far, and you can definitely break down the information in a fairly good way. But then once you know and understand the things you should be looking for, like getting something else to help break that data down into that way and several others is really, really super, super helpful. And not having to, write scripts or, kind of go through crazy databases or create crazy formulas in a database to try to figure out that same info is, I think, going to really, really start changing here in the next couple of years once once that gets more developed. I think it's a little bit slower to adopt.
Especially with our upper echelon of clients and customers, smaller mom and pop shops where they send maybe thousands of messages a week or a month. Pretty easy to go through and kind of figure out some of the smaller trends there. But when you're sending out millions of messages a day and trying to parse through that information, it gets more aggressively difficult every day. So, AI's assistance there is going to be game changing for sure.
Yeah, we were worried more on the end of bad actors using it to kind of create sites and stuff for people to falsely opt in, and we were more worried about that. And then now it's like, okay, and especially too when AI was introduced, especially from the deliverability side, I feel like that the old man screaming at the sky, like, why is this, why are we hearing about this? Now the smoke is kind of cleared. We've kind of seen okay, it's being used on the email marketing side. It can still be used on the deliverability side to, sift through data points and even through seed lists and stuff like that. But it's just okay, it's here. It's not going to go anywhere for the time being. I am waiting until Skynet kind of turns back on or something like that. And that's what scares me about it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the big
all I have to
Skynet
say
thing
about
probably is
that.
going to happen is you're just going to get signed up for a whole bunch of subscriptions that you don't want, and that's pretty much it. You're not going to get terminated or anything, so you'll be fine.
What's one I wanted to ask this year that we didn't get in there was, how have you been affected by a spam bot attack? Every company I know that has a large list size has, really good emails got hit really hard late last year. We added something like 1.3 million addresses to our list in the span of 3.5 days before we caught it, because I'm not in there every day, right? So I'm like, dang, we're cooking on day one. I was like, that's good. And then I went back and I was like, oh wait, this is not real. There's no way. And so I think I think AI is going to get really good at seeing this, name plus 74663 at gmail.com, is not realistic when all of these are being added at the same time. So that's another kind of leading into the AI world. I think it was just interesting. I don't know, if someone are listening to this podcast and they would have a way to reach out, and that'd be a cool little survey as how affected are you by spam bots?
Yeah, and if it released on April 1st, I'd be like, well, you're about to be affected by one. I can't wait to see what else we got, cooking for that. I guess on your end, I know, as far as data collection, have y'all seen any other changes with AI, at least from really good emails perspective, on how you're curating stuff and how things are being collected?
We've got some things cooking on how we use our AI on RGE, so that'll be really fun. We've got some things on the roadmap for this year that will analyze different emails you've collected, analyze the emails actually on the site to help you understand better copywriting skills or hierarchy of visuals, things like that. So that's all in the works. We just need to get cleared by legal, as legal likes to have their say, but that's a good thing because it keep us in business. So yeah, once we clear through those things, we should have some really cool AI side stuff on RGE. And we already have some AI stuff on the Be Free side too, where it helps you write a little bit better. You can insert OpenAI, some visual graphics, add them right into your email templates, stuff like that. So we also have something called Smart Check, which goes through all your alt text and broken links and everything. We'll find things that you can fix before you send your email out.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, right on.
Speaking of, so all these results that you guys have collected and everything from the survey, so it sounds like you're going to release the majority and everything, kind of show everyone what y'all found at Unspam, and that's April 22nd to the 24th?
Yeah. We'll do a big presentation then, and then the team back at home, back at the office, the virtual office all over the world, They're cooking up all kinds of, there's like a webinar coming up on like email mistakes where there's a couple of questions that we asked, in particular the Be Free audience, about email mistakes that I think we're going to weave into that. And then all kinds of content and stuff that's planned. So we'll be recording those unspam sessions and you'll be able to watch the video with all the data and the trends that we found. But then just keep an eye out for more webinars, content, all the different ways we want to slice and dice this data. Yep.
Awesome.
That is
Great
really
stuff.
awesome.
Yeah. Well, Justine, Mike, thank you so much for spending some time with us today and breaking down the survey results. If folks want to see more information or get more information about y'all, where can they find you?
Man, I used to say Twitter, but that's not really a thing anymore. I don't know. Call me on my private Batcave line. I don't know. Yeah, LinkedIn probably is the best place to find me these days, or an Email Geek Slack, I'm going to say.
Oh, nice. And Mike, you're giving out your personal number now?
My social security number is, find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to reach me. Or you can just send me an email at Mike at Really Good Emails. I get those instantly and read every single one of them.
Nice. Great deal. Thomas, if people want to find more information about us or find out more information about what we got going on, where can they go?
Yes, for sure. You can find more at mailgun.com/resources/podcast. And you can also watch this at youtube.com/@mailgun. And you can see and hang out with our amazing guests as well. Also, if you want to follow along with some of these resources and stuff that Justine and Mike has brought over from Really Good Emails, we'll also have those in our show notes as well, so you can take a look at that. So, yeah.
Sweet. Well, once again, thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us. And until next time, take it easy.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, y'all.
This has been a production of Cinch Mailgun. Learn more at mailgun.com.